I am used to starting class when the bell rings, nor cuts, and the agenda objectives are on the board. So I taught bell to bell and appreciate, I also know traffic in Pinellas County. So if people trickle in, they trickle in, but we'll start as close to 9:05, 9:06 now. As we can. So we'll start by just going around the room briefly, just introduce yourself, and then Victoria, can you just read off who is online, because online is for listening in only, virtual is listening in only. Correct?
Yes.
Okay. All right, so we'll start with that.
Good morning, everyone. Donnie, Commissioner for Monmouth.
Lieutenant Hayes.
Oh, sorry, I was counting.
Oh.
Zach Hish, Pinellas County Sheriff's Office.
Good morning, Kevin Marone with Foley Centers.
Good morning, Ross Silvers, PSTA.
Sean King, Habitat for Humanity.
Monica Lesnick, HLA.
April Lott, Chair of the Providers Council, Directions for Living.
Victoria Kelly, Manager of Organizational Advancement, Homeless Leadership Alliance of Pinellas.
Beth Wetzel, City Treasurer Island. Mariana Riverside, CONSA, and member of the Providers Council.
Michael Zalato, also Providers Council.
And in the back,
Carly Pinella, HLA. Lauren Davis, HLA.
Jason Sapples, I'm the Program Manager for Housing and Community Engagement for Central Florida Behavioral Health.
fantastic. And then online, Victoria, can you just read off who's online, please?
Absolutely. We have Amy Foster and Danielle Green online. Thank you for joining us, ladies.
All right.
Connie Council sent her regrets, she's sick.
I saw that. Thank you. And so what's our number right now that we have?
We need one more person for more.
Okay, so we'll go through the agenda packet and hopefully some of them will trickle in and we can double back for official action with the vote, but we really need that. All right. So we have Commissioner Peters is.
She's here. She just.
Fantastic. You are.
A success story, though.
Yep, we do. Yes. Yes. Welcome. Go ahead with the, we'll start with the success story and then welcome Commissioner Peters.
You know, I assume that many of us have success stories that we could share, but I do have one that I would like to share. We have we had a family that was brought to our attention by, I believe it was Councilwoman Beckman from the city of Clearwater, but it came out of Clearwater, a family that was, this had gone through quite a bit, in particular, living in an apartment or housing that had been flooded. And ultimately with, sewage backing up into the house and black mold and a whole variety of things. And ultimately, we did not get involved in time to prevent an eviction, which I wish we would have gotten it even a couple weeks sooner to be able to prevent the eviction. But in any case, an eviction occurred, which is when it was ultimately brought to Directions for Living. And they have been in a hotel for the past several weeks. They have a lot of special needs in their household, but they have 3 children, a set of twins and an older son, all 3 incredible students, straight A students, actively involved in a whole variety of things, and have been able to continue with their really with their success in academics and extracurricular activities. In any case, they were just rehoused and into their own new apartment. And mom is now working full-time and has been working for the past many weeks, and all their past due car payments and a variety of other things that were so past due, they've been able to pay on their own because we were paying for their hotel. And I really think, and a lot of people in the community have surrounded this family with gently used, but new to them, household furniture and beds and all the things that they need to start a new apartment living. And it really is just a tremendous success story. And I just wanted to share that.
Thank you. Can I just comment just a little bit, because I know this family pretty intimately. I had them over for Christmas Those kids are gifted. They are an amazing family, but really unique challenges. And it was a learning curve for me because they contacted me as soon as I was elected 3 years ago with frantic, stuff. I'm bad landlord, mold, all that business. And I would reach out to them and connected them with April last year. I remember always on a Friday, it seems like, at
6
the
p.m. always.
affordable housing, conference in wherever we were at, Orlando or Hollywood or whatever it was, but. And April was there to pick up the phone, but then they didn't follow through the family. So it was all this kind of fits and starts. And then, it finally worked. So it's been phenomenal. But yeah, it was a learning experience for me as well, which is probably more the norm of a family that has fits and starts. So,
Yes.
here are the resources, you need to do this, but then they don't. And then 3 weeks later, there's another crisis, but I'm so happy and proud that.
I think it speaks to our staff because you get the right staff person attached to this family and, because we had again, fits and starts. And then I put one person in particular who is a dog with a bone and she was like, come hell or high water, right? We are fixing this. And she really just wrapped around this family and just wouldn't let go. Like even when they tried to get her to let go, she was like, no, right? Like I've been put on this and we are getting it done and
Fantastic.
we got it done. So
I think it's so important. I think we need to spend a little more time telling some of these stories because, we get so caught up in funders council, providers council, and how we're gonna make this work and all these things. We sometimes lose sight of the fact of the end result. Because I look around this table and think of just some of the remarkable work we all do. We're part of the Cohort of Champions program in St. Pete. We've had these 2 kids since they were probably in middle school. They're graduated high school, but their family was facing eviction. We got them both full-time at HT Global within a couple days just because people asked. And they're both working full-time. The family of 5 is not going to get evicted. And when we do things like that, we have to share those stories.
yes, we do.
Because it's just,
Yeah.
I mean, think about how frustrating sometimes these meetings and processes go, not because we're not all well-intentioned, because they're tough. Think about how many conversations we have about different things at Safe Harbor or what you guys are doing at bowling. I mean, all of us, we got to share these stories more because it's like, this is really cool stuff that when the end results, I mean, you could tell a million stories. It's important that we don't forget the narratives. Because sometimes we get so caught up with data and funding and everything else, data and funding, that we forget to do that. So that's awesome. Thanks for sharing.
I think that's a great point, Mike. I think we gotta figure out a way to incorporate that into our agenda packets or make time for it. It really keeps, I think, us going. We've got to hear those. Because it's all work here. It's all boom, boom, boom. Okay.
We could maybe do some video stories
Yeah.
to,
Yeah.
if people want to do some video stories and send them to us at HLA, we can actually start sharing them with everyone. And that's another way that we can do
I like
that.
that idea.
And there is also, everybody who gets the providers newsletter. As of last month, a little section was added to the bottom. There is a link with a form you can actually submit success stories to. And we will elevate them across the COC, share them with people, put them in the newsletter and make sure that they get out there.
Love that idea. Thank you. And we do that.
Well, I think about Amber too. I mean, you look at, here's a single mom, practically homeless. We get her in a program. She winds up doing OJT at Habitat. She does great. They hire her. She's making more money than she ever did. And she's now in the program to get a house for her and her kids. I mean, those kind of, and that's what's such a powerful thing of this kind of group, right? Because, when we start thinking, all right, I know who to call.
Exactly.
Mhm. Fantastic. All right. So happy to announce we have quorum here now. And so welcome Commissioner Peters. We're glad you're here and officially on our board of directors. We have just a brief update, any update on getting someone from school board?
Yes, actually, I've been speaking with Dr. Cantrell and I have a meeting with a couple of the school board members tentatively planned for the next couple of weeks when I get back.
Okay,
Yeah, they've been a challenge, and also the same with public defender's office, by the way.
School board's essential.
Yes.
To get them here.
Talk to me about that. 'cause
I will.
Go directly to Sarah.
Okay, so I'm assuming everyone looked at the minutes?
I need to add an item to the
Oh,
consent
yeah,
agenda,
that's right.
please.
Go ahead.
I do need to add an item to the consent agenda. Since this is our meeting before hurricane season starts. The state will have additional rush funding for COCs for items to house homeless folks during emergencies that won't be funded by FEMA. So we are going to need to simply add within our coordinated entry policies, ESG and ESGCV guidelines. Those are guidelines straight from HUD. I'm happy, Victoria has a PowerPoint on it if we need to see it, but again, these are guidelines that are already defined that we just need to copy and paste and put into coordinated entry. So God forbid there's a storm, it makes it so there's no match requirement. And they can, it would provide services for shelter, rapid rehousing, street outreach, HMIS, and administration. And these are again funds that would supplant non-eligible FEMA funding. I just need to add that as an action item for us to vote on today, please.
Okay, so we can move to approve the consent agenda, the two board attendance and minutes, and then we'll have your action item.
Okay.
Is that okay?
That's it, thank you.
Okay. Any
Motion
questions?
to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Okay, motion and second. Any questions? Any discussion? Okay, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay.
Do we need to take action on Kathleen?
No.
It says
Because
action.
it's an appointed,
Okay.
as part of the charter.
I just want to say welcome back.
Yeah.
It's good to see you. Yes, everybody, I hope everybody remembers that that Kathleen was with us on the board many years ago when she was in I think you were still right? You were with the house, you did a lot for us. I don't know if you were actually, right? We did the whole media campaign, got all the arts people.
I was not on the board. And the
You were in the house.
anniversary of that getting launched was just recently. And I just gave you goosebumps, thank you. That was a really cool thing, and then the legislature put it down. It was sad. So those of you that don't know, we can tell you it's another story, but we did the most successful social marketing campaign to change public behavior is the Truth Campaign. And I don't know if you know what the original Truth Campaign is. But it was when the lawsuit happened with Big Tobacco, and the state had a bunch of money, and they went around the agency that they hired went around the state and interviewed children because they wanted to stop people from starting smoking and get people to stop smoking. And that campaign was so hugely successful that smoking plummeted. It's now on the rise again, and vaping makes it's much worse. But so we did a social marketing campaign on homelessness, and it was the most amazing creative campaign. And it really woke people up to the awareness, but the tourism industry got upset.
Yeah.
That we had commercials and billboards talking about how many homeless children they had and how many homeless veterans we had. And so somebody went to someone in the legislature and said, there's a state representative that's doing this. And so they got it shut down. So.
But it was the face of homelessness, and the campaign was about really changing the perception.
Yeah.
Which is that, homelessness is only impacting, kind of middle-aged men who have a substance abuse problem. And really changed the picture.
It was outstanding.
It was really outstanding.
And college students did it.
And college students did it. That's right.
College students did it,
Yeah.
so it didn't cost us any money.
Yeah.
And the professor now is my best friend, become best friends now, but it's, and they did a book to go in schools, and I have copies. I don't know if I still have those copies. But it was incredible, and the commercials were amazing, the PSAs were amazing, the billboards were amazing. And it was incredible, and thank you, but no, I was not on the committee then, I was on the committee. I don't remember when, like 5 years ago, I was on it 1 year, but.
In any case, I just wanted everybody to know that you come with a wealth of knowledge and
Yeah,
experience
and
with this topic.
Has a big homeless bill to ensure that any money that went into ship and sale included a percentage of the money for mental health services, wraparound services. So even though I wasn't on this committee, we were working really closely to do a homeless bill and the homeless campaign, and Then I stopped working on homelessness, started working on mental illness issues, but it's all goes to the same, place.
Absolutely.
It all goes to the same. Mental illness and addiction all go to the same place. I just wasn't on this committee, so thank you.
Well, we're glad you're
Nice to be
here.
here.
Fantastic. Bring a lot to the table. Absolutely. Okay, thank you. All right, your item, Monica.
Yes, so
wanna state
as
it?
I stated, essentially, the state has received rush funding from HUD, and this funding will essentially supplant any funding for our community within natural disasters. It also waives any match requirement, so we could draw down these funds from the state in case of a disaster. Unfortunately, they have let us know that we need to include the ESG guidelines within our coordinated entry policies, which have already been passed by the board multiple times, so we're not, no changes, it's just we're gonna copy and paste them in, so we can show to DCF and the state, yes, we have them in our coordinated entry policies. If there's a disaster, we would then be able to draw down those funds for homeless services.
We have a motion to move to insert that language.
Motion to approve. Second.
Any discussion? Okay, motion in a second. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay, fantastic. Motion
Thank
carries.
you all.
We'll move on to the HMIS charter.
I will take that also. There have actually been no charters since
changes.
2022, no changes to the HMIS charter. This is a procedural requirement.
Any comments, questions?
Is this coming out of committee?
Yes, this came out of HMIS governance, absolutely. They approved it on 2/16/23.
Move approval.
Second.
Okay, any discussion? Motion in a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, fantastic.
All right, move.
Yep, okay, we'll move on.
I apologize.
It's all good. We're a team. Quarter two data. Lauren?
Maria?
Good morning, everyone. It's honestly not too different from quarter one. There's a, last year's quarter two, there was a 22% increase in total client inflow. But our outflow had a 28% increase from last year, to permanent housing, so that's good. As you can see, it states that 73% of our inflow comes from emergency shelter. I wanted to note the exits that were identified as unknown. That does limit our ability to tell the story of the client when we do have those exits. I was working to narrow down exactly which projects those are coming from, but a majority of them are street outreach and emergency shelter. We tend to lose the clients when they leave in the middle of the night, or we just lose track of them whilst we're working in street outreach. So it's part of our benchmarks that were approved by the data system performance does touch on having an eye and a pulse on those unknown exits. So we can continue to work to tell that story of the client. Over quarter two, 16,708 clients were served. This is up 7% from last year. More than half were served through housing projects, 10% through homeless prevention. Again, we're at about 60% comprised of individuals, 25% were veterans, and 13 were households with minor children. Was there anything that anybody saw in the data that you wanted me to touch on? We broke into the race equity. There really wasn't too significant of a change from Q1 to Q2. I wanted to reach out to you guys to see outside of the information we present here, if there's anything else that we could be bringing and giving more information on regarding our system response. Yeah.
I do. So I would prefer, along with the percentages, to have the numbers, because I have no idea what the percentages mean here. And the other thing is, you know, we've got 57% are served through housing projects, 18% rapid rehousing, 27% permanent supportive housing. I thought we have like years-long waits for permanent supportive housing. So when you say 27% are being served, you know, does this mean new placements in permanent supportive housing, and where are we finding those, and how many is 20%, 27%? That's struck me like Wow.
that was higher. So the report is based on clients served, so anytime it would probably be pulling off of the clients currently enrolled as well.
So it's not new.
Not new.
See, I
So
need
you'd
to
like
know
see
that.
New numbers.
Yeah,
Yeah.
And some kind of distinction. This is, yeah, these are the currents because, again, we need to know what the need is.
Mhm, absolutely.
Not how many are there.
And how many have been there for.
Yeah, and again, and I think this is a great way to display it. Again, numbers I think will be more helpful for me than along with percentages. But also if we've got some asterisks or something down at the bottom that indicate wait lists, wait times.
Yeah.
So that we put, that needs to be front and center of what's the need, because this looks like, oh, things are going great there, you know? But it's like, maybe not, you know?
I have a question too.
That's good.
Looking at race equity, I'm looking at, access to services.
Mhm.
And I can see in terms of prevention for African Americans or for blacks, if you will, we're at 58%?
53.
53%. I happen for that. Okay. And then I noticed as it relates to rapid rehousing and permanent supportive housing, we see they're very low in that area in comparison to white. So any explanation for that or?
I can help.
So what do you think?
Please,
about?
I can
knew
help.
You would. I wanted you to.
The 53% in homeless prevention is because we did a targeted zip code prevention initiative. So, yep, and so the targeted zip codes, while if you remember correctly, and someone might have, I'm looking around to see who can help me, we aren't permitted, Sean, we aren't permitted to say that our funding sources will go specifically to a population that is
A
disproportionate, a demographic. But so the way we worked around it is we looked at kind of the heat maps of high need in the heat maps that were available for evictions and COVID positivity and a variety of other things, poverty, and we chose those zip codes. And I think we started with 7 or 8 and added a handful of others. In any case, it really had a very significant impact on homeless prevention. And I think if we can tie some of these things together in here, is that it says 98% of households served in homeless prevention exited to permanent housing. So it really did work. In addition to the number or the percentage of people that were served, the intervention itself worked. We didn't, ultimately, we kept people in their homes. What I will say about that is that the prevention dollars are now gone. And so we don't have a way to continue this trend. But I think the rest of the second half of your question, I think, is an important one. In other words, why in street outreach is, are we identifying more white individuals who are homeless over those who may be Black or brown, and the same with the rest? And I don't know the answer to that. I don't know why that is. I don't know if there is do you?
I don't.
Any idea?
I without having a pulse on the end user and the community and seeing what the inflow is, overall, I don't have an exact answer.
The only thing I would be able to say to that perhaps is that if you remember correctly with street outreach, has been what I'm going to call the Achilles heel for me, kind of has frustrated me for years, because street outreach, as you will remember, there has only been a handful of street outreach teams. For example, one that's paired with Pinellas Park, one that's paired with Clearwater, one that's paired with Largo. And I don't know if those communities are a proper representation. In other words, I wonder what the demographics of those communities are. So if Largo has more white people or Clearwater has more white people, then we might be seeing a disproportionate because of the community, but it's not representative of the county as a whole. Am I making sense? So I think that I will tell you that we're now doing an initiative with PSTA down at Grand Central Station. And I think we're gonna start to see a rather large influx of, we are getting to the people who need us to get to them. And so I'm wondering if the numbers will change.
Yeah, I was just hoping that there wasn't an over reliance on the St. Petersburg Police Department to identify the street outreach. So, and we do know the demographics of those communities, so we need to pay attention to that. Because, you know, the poverty, the heat areas would be in South St. Petersburg, so not at the exclusion of others, just being mindful of that in terms of our.
And they're not
our outreach.
entering into HYS.
No. Who is?
Or, the call,
No,
the call
they're not.
program in St. Pete, which is probably coming in contact with a lot of those individuals are not entering into HMIS from what I recall.
But April White is, correct? Yeah, so
Okay, so
the
there's-
identified quote unquote street outreach person, April White, in the city of St. Pete is entering into HMIS. But there's a lot of initiatives happening in St. Pete, for example, the call
Okay,
team,
yeah.
as well as PAC. And I don't believe either of those groups enter into, I'm looking at Helen for confirmation. Call does not enter into HMIS, and neither does PAC. So, you know, these numbers, you know, it's almost like we should have an asterisk next to it, because this is really only what we have access to. Because it's not being entered.
Thank you so much.
It has nothing to do with the PAC. We don't have PAC, you're talking about PAC funding.
Yeah.
PAC funding is not a PAC team,
Okay,
but PAC is a separate thing that the city of St. Petersburg has funded.
perfect, I'm glad I
And
asked.
non-emergency calls usually.
Kevin,
Health related.
Well, and circling back to the need question, I mean, when I look at the clients served, I mean, there's 7,200 clients each quarter that we're not serving in any housing project, and I think that's the bottom part of this, because, you know, 16,708 people were served and 57% went into a housing solution, whether it be prevention. There's 7,200 people in a quarter that in our system, whether it be through street outreach, shelter, or whatever, that we haven't been able to connect to a housing project.
and sometimes I wonder if
That's
we
still
should,
pretty, that's still a pretty big number.
I think we
so-
should flip it somehow. You know, like where we are noting that,
Yeah.
right? Because this is drawing our attention to the successes, right, which are wonderful. I think the successes are wonderful for a certain forum. This forum, I'm not sure that's what we, right? I want to talk about the 70,
I do
the
too,
math.
and that's why I wanted those numbers, so I think, you know, as we look at the time and staying on schedule, I think. Again, actual numbers coupled with the percentage is good, and then, you know, any necessary asterisks on this data that says, you know, it doesn't include these types of outreach or people that might not enter into HMIS. But also a continuing accompanied handout that I think is important to have as a standalone. You know, kind of like this guy, that's unmet need. Unmet needs, and if we want to do it with family, if we want to do it with vets, if we want to do it with, you know, people living in cars, whatever we want to do with that unmet need, we need to have that front and center. That needs to be the drumbeat, I think, and we all need to be cognizant of it to be able to speak real quickly. Yeah, Lieutenant Davis.
Real quick, because I don't want to bother. That 70% number is without follow-up case management for these people that disappear. I think there's a lot of positive exits in there, but we can't capture that.
Okay,
So I know there was a pilot with USF a few years ago where they were starting, there was the idea of follow-up case management, find where these people went. Because I think there's a lot of positive exits in there that just don't get coded appropriately, and we
we've lost that good.
it's a resilient population.
Yeah.
And they figure it out a lot of times, so I think we can capture a lot more if we can find a way to do follow-up.
Okay, good point.
So I just want to pull out two things real quick. One, the 94% of individuals maintain a permanent supportive housing, so that's an intervention, right? That if we get people into permanent supportive housing, they're generally gonna way more often than not, gonna be successful in staying. And two, 98% of households served in prevention exited permanent housing. So the reason why I'm pulling that out is if you've gone through the NOFA process and all that kind of stuff, we get kind of cost per unit sort of metrics and rapid rehousing and permanent supportive housing dollars. I'm sure we get it in prevention. There seems to be an economic case that can be made to our funders that says, look, an ounce of prevention is
Yes.
worth a pound of cure. And if we put, if we're seeing this success, right, this is what these numbers are saying, like, this is a highly effective, successful program. So if you provide some dollars up here, we're gonna be net positive as a community, in serving these populations. So that's just something we may wanna look at, and maybe fund or do an analysis of actual. Now we have the data, 'cause we didn't have prevention before, now we have it, now it might be going away, so. It might be a good case study, but just pulling out those two numbers.
And I hope that this data is also being shared, on who I'm looking at you, being shared with Funders Council,
Yes.
right? Because Funders Council, it can be instrumental, like right now, there are at least 2 funding opportunities out. There's a third, you know, is getting ready to come out. Helen's today, it's coming out today. It's out today. So
This feels like it's out now.
there are several funding opportunities that are out right now. That if they were not influenced by the data, and I hope that they were, that the data then is being matched with or keeping pace with the funders, right? The funders are keeping pace with the data to say that based on this data, we're releasing this funding opportunity to fund prevention because we know it works, to fund rapid rehousing because we know that it works, kind of thing. So if this data is getting to Funders Council, it means truly that we are working in partnership.
Well, I don't want to rehash an old issue, but I'm going to do it right now as I just sat through the civil action funding. I'm on that committee, and one of the challenges was we had as a board not making a decision on our priority funding populations. We did do it on the type of funding, but that may not have been included. So that's another issue. But as a board, if we're going to signal to our funders what should we fund, we need to make those decisions. So
But we've got our 3. You want to narrow down more?
By population.
well, we need to be, my opinion, we need to be more definitive in saying, okay, this is what you need to, these are the things you need to fund. And these are the populations you need to fund. We said last time, these are the things you need to
Right.
fund in an order. I don't know if that necessarily, I know in social action funding, the mandate, for lack of a better term, is just look at the target populations, right? So there is no target population, it's everybody. So what we're funding, which then has a trickle down effect, because as a funder or as a provider, you write your grant
Right, for that population.
for the funding. So now if we wanted prevention or permanent support, whatever, funders aren't writing to that. Or providers aren't writing to the funding. So just, we need to get, it has an impact. So when we don't make a decision,
Or narrow it enough.
it's a decision.
Okay, we can put that on the next meeting. We okay with that? Think it's too late?
Oh, it's definitely
It's-
too late.
Yeah, it's definitely too late, but
it's-
it's a continuing conversation that we need to keep on our radar
Yeah.
and.
Okay,
I mean, I'm looking at Providers Council members to say, it should be on the Providers Council agenda, next agenda.
yes,
And we should, it should be like an escape room, where we're all locked in the room and we can't get out until we have solved the problem together. Because what happens is we get into this discussion too late in the year, number one, and number two, it's circular.
yeah,
Because, you know, I want to say everybody brings their own.
I remember Lariana's, yeah, that's right, exactly, talking about your funding priorities and how. Yeah, you all have that in the provider, so you guys hash that out, Got it, Kevin?
Got it.
All right.
Will be locked.
Let's do it.
It needs to be an escape room, like we're locked in and we gotta figure it out.
Okay,
Bring snacks.
so you guys are doing it?
That's
Fantastic.
totally right.
And escape straight that.
Good.
Okay, what's that?
All right. So next Providers Council, they'll do that. Fantastic. Good. Okay, we need to take, anything more on, we need to just accept, where's my agenda? Okay. Action. Do we need to accept the Q2 data? Any further discussion or questions, comments, guidance on? Okay, fantastic. Do I have a motion?
Move approval.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, fantastic. Rank and review, Monica, for the,
Hello, everyone. It is that wonderful time of year again to appoint our rank and review. We have some excellent folks this year that have stepped up to volunteer and support. Currently for rank and review for our NOFO, we have Devin Cooley, Sam Picard, Miriam Gonzalez, which has with St. Pete Housing Authority, also lived experience. Yes, our lived experience member. Kevin Chenault with Salvation Army, and then also we have a volunteer, Lori Kroll, who has come to a few of our membership meetings. She is with Weller Management and also connected to the Bay Area Apartment Association. This is if anybody else would like to join rank and review.
Well, I have, I think, a slight modification. So Kevin volunteered as our fill-in for Providers Council. Just as a reminder to everybody, it is extremely important that we have a member of Providers Council. It gets a little difficult because you can't also be someone who is submitting an application under the NOFO. So it limits who can participate. And it really needs to be somebody who has their finger on the pulse of all things, because it really is an important role. In any case, the Providers Council identified Elisa Gavin, who is with the Housing Authority as the member of Providers Council as our #1 selection. She needed to get permission. Kevin was going to serve as the backup if she couldn't. I did hear from Elisa last Friday at the workshop. And she did get permission.
Oh, perfect.
So we're gonna swap them unless you have room for two. If you
We do have room for two.
if you have room for two, I don't see any reason why.
And
we
it
couldn't
might
just
be
vote
good
it
to
then.
have the backup
Sure.
just in
Yeah.
case there's any challenges.
I would agree. I don't think if any of the providers have a disagreement with that, if we had two, I think that would be good.
fantastic. Anyone else want to jump in and do that horrific job?
She meant, and just, to share with everybody,
It's fine.
we did very well this year with our scoring on our rank and review. There are national scoring discrepancies across the country for all NOFOs for tabulations. So right now they are looking at so for one of the indicators is it's a 10-point question, and it's directly pulled from our HUD-X data. So there's no narrative component attached to it. Within our scoring sheet, they gave us a 0, but in the final tabulation, we had an extra 9 points in that category somewhere. So we have made a request to say, hey, what's the difference for our HUD TA? We haven't received that information back. And we've also, as we shared with the executive committee, working with a consultant this year to ensure that we get as much funding brought down due to some of the system performance issues that we know we will have as a continuum.
I will point out that street outreach in particular is going to continue to be a pain point for this community if we do not get street outreach fixed. And I hear that it is a part of Built for Zero at this time, right? That they're including and or looking at standards and other things relative to street outreach. But street outreach is going to continue to cost us points, and eventually we're not going to be able to dig our way out of that hole. So I just want to continue to move this football down the field here on outreach and street outreach in particular.
We do have a meeting coming up, Carly, if I'm not mistaken, in the next couple of weeks, to look on those standards again, April, so we are, yeah.
It's street outreach as well as safe harbor that cause our
We have
Are the
lots,
biggest
well, there are
impact?
lots of, one of the problems is the inflows and the outflows right now, and. At the next board meeting, if you guys would like, we can bring a full outline, or we can actually send out. What our system performance measures look like, we do send them just to a DSP committee, but we can actually include those in the next packet. So everybody really sees truly what they look like.
I think.
I
so.
think what we
Yeah.
should be looking at that maybe, but I think maybe within that, looking at the 2 or 3 areas that we as a system are not doing well, and are costing us points in the NOFO. And because what I think this group needs to be aware of, back to, kind of something Sean said, which is we have to be able to make very hard decisions. They're not popular, they're not, nobody wants to make them, but we have to start doing that.
To get the money.
Yes,
yeah.
and to get the healthiest system of care that we can have with the maximum amount of money that's available.
Okay.
And HUD is being very clear. If we're not willing to make decisions on A, B, and C, we will continue to lose points.
We can do that, absolutely. So within the next packet, and we'll do this both for all councils and committees, we will pull down, we're going to get together and work on this, gaps, issues, and then aspirant things we know, but we'll rank it out for everyone.
Sounds great.
We do have to vote on the rank and review that.
Okay, rank and review group. We all good? Anyone want to throw their name in the hat before we approve this rank and review committee? Or group? Okay, motion to approve.
Motion to approve.
Second. Okay, thank you. And all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay, fantastic. Thank you to those who have signed on to be work on the rank and review committee. Awesome. All right. So we have written standards for monitoring.
Awesome. Just to give everybody an overview of this, Carly is going to do a presentation for you all. This was approved by Providers Council on April 22nd. And majority, actually, the language that we've included are items that HUD funded providers are already being faced, they already have to provide currently. Carly, do you want
Yeah, Victoria, can you stop sharing your screen?
Amy takes such a nice picture.
Right, I feel like she's still.
I know, yeah. Still here.
So we're looking at the written standards for HUD monitoring. I'm just gonna go like this.
We can see it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Technical difficulties here. Fine.
Okay.
So everything that's in the policy that's read, the additions to this, so nothing was changed, just added, basically. So we're looking at the policy procedures, obviously as a lead agency, we need to come up with a system performance monitoring plan. There were some key things that were missing in this document. One of them was talking about match. So the records must indicate the grant and fiscal year with each matching contribution is counted and the value placed in the third party in-kind contributions. So in the policies and procedures, when we talk about documentation, we just didn't have anything in there about providing match documentation. So that's kind of a short section. There we go. So this next section, this is where all that other huge chunk of red comes from the client file and HMIS review. So, I mean, you don't have to read too much into it, but basically when we review the HUD files for the HUD regulations, there are certain things that projects require, right? So sometimes we talk about income, we're looking at recertification. For projects like PSH, we need to show disability, whatever their homeless status is, whether that's at risk or literally homeless, we need documentation of that. The product status, again, for PSH, when we're looking at DV, and then how we're serving people and the standards. So, okay, So in all of those things, it basically just outlines what we're gonna say is acceptable to prove these certain things. So for homeless status, that could be a third-party documentation, it could be an HMIS record. When we're looking at disability, we can talk about maybe a letter from Social Security showing that you're receiving your SSDI benefits, or maybe it's a doctor's note. Looking at chronic homeless, we're using the standard definition of how you show that, so, and then things like DV, we're asking just even a written statement from the client, so there's no proof, it's just the statement from the client that they're receiving those services. Or that is the case of what happened of their homelessness, and things like that. So that's really just, that big chunk of red is really just saying how we're gonna allow projects to prove those things. When we do HUD monitoring, so we're gonna look at 4 client files per project. So when we look at those, we wanna know, okay, what are your requirements for your program, and then how did you prove it? That's what that is.
So when you said four client files, that's like spot checking?
Yes, so we randomly choose and we give them 14 days to provide the documentation that they need. And then these are the things they should show. And then the last part that we added in here was a contract closeout. So we did have a project this year that chose not to be renewed through HUD. So that was kind of one of the first times that we were looking at this. And we need to outline basically what happens when a project decides to close out or not renew funding or is terminated. And whether that termination comes from the HLA or comes from the provider themselves, they can terminate their own projects. So which one is said?
Which one decided to close out this year?
Catholic Charities did not ask for renewal funding for their pathway Rockford housing program. So basically it says things like notify us, right? Give us some heads up,
Yeah.
right? Whether that's an email or a phone call, like let us know. And also like what kind of documentation are they gonna need to show? We're still gonna monitor the closeout projects, obviously, because we want to show HUD, right, if the project was successful, even if they're not gonna renew funding. And then how we talk about that termination piece, whoever decides to terminate, basically saying that if you don't meet your deliverables, you can't stop serving clients, right? Like, you need to keep doing what we're doing, try our best to expend funds, things like that. So actually, those are the only additions. It looks like a lot more when you look at it. This is the simplified version of what's in there. They don't have any questions?
I have one question.
Sure.
Could you, close out include situations where, a provider that just simply volunteered, just surrendered the contract?
I believe so, yes. So that would be considered.
Yeah.
Termination.
Not a termination.
Yeah,
Now that
self-termination.
the project's been completed, it's just a choice.
Yep.
And
they could choose to do that.
And so where would that fall, those two?
In termination. Completion is like for instance, Catholic Charities, they're completed. They've expended all of their funds and they don't have new funds coming from HUD. So they're done, they're completed versus termination. The voluntary or involuntary.
Okay. Okay, all right, thank you.
So this did go to Providers Council and it was approved by Providers Council. What I will say about that is that when it came to Providers Council, we didn't have it in track changes. So we got it this way, kind of the way we're getting it right now, which is, kind of an explanation of the changes. There were no concerns from the Providers Council based on how it was presented. So I would make a motion to approve.
Second.
Anybody questions or discussion?
My only discussion point would be, is that I would like for the Providers Council, and I've made a note to put it on the agenda for next Providers Council, is that we really take a look at the full document. Because there are a handful of things in this document that are, concern would be too strong of a word, but that are concerning, that I think as providers, we need to make sure that everybody is understanding what, for example, when it talks about an incident report within 1 day of occurrence, or, a deceased client within 1 business day of occurrence. Sometimes we don't know, we get notification that a client has passed away, certainly long after.
Yeah.
One day. And so it's just those kinds of things that I just want to make sure that people understand, because that could become a pain point for their annual review or their they're monitoring
If somebody.
if they
digs about it.
didn't notify them. And so the 1 day thing is pretty onerous. And I just want to make sure. So I think we need to look at this in more detail with not just the changes. So that will be something I'm taking back to Providers Council, just to make sure that everybody's like, yeah, we could make a 1 day happen. You know, I'm thinking about directions for living. We can't make a 1 day happen. I'm just gonna say it. But perhaps that's just us. In any case, so.
That makes complete sense, yeah.
Yeah,
Really cool.
Exactly. That when we monitor, we're not trying to hurt the projects, right? Like it really is TA, we're trying to help. So I do agree, we should probably fix that because that's insane. But at the end of the day, we have an explanation. We're not gonna pay it.
Yes.
Right, so, and just so everybody knows, HUD monitoring work will start on May 31st and go through June 8th. So that will be monitoring this year, and if you have a HUD funded project, you'll get your memos on May 15th.
Okay, got that, HUD monitoring, May 31st to June 8th, heads up. Spot checks. Right.
That's something you went here.
Okay. All right, so we, taking action on that. To, consolidated plan.
Yes, thank you. So again, this was approved by Providers Council on April 23rd. Housing or HUD and also DCF requires each continuum of care to submit a consolidated plan on an annual basis, which must be approved by the board. What I would like to share is this document focuses on ensuring homelessness is rare, a one-time experience. These are aspirants also. So I want everybody to think about, these are things that as we move forward, these would be things we would say, these are best practices, things we want to do, things that could help move the system. Will we meet all of these things? No, and we're not saying we're going to. I want to be really clear about that. These are strategies that is a continuum that we think would be good to take based on conversations we've had at Providers Council, Funders Council, our lived experience advisory group. And again, all of this also is a continuation of the work we did when we started the special NOFO. So these items that are included in red directly come from that 15-page plan that we were looking at on following the special NOFO. Harley, did I?
Yeah, and just what's on the screen, this is how the consolidated plan is broken out. So our 3 big goals are rare, brief, one time. And then just the updates, we just updated the strategy. So like in each one, a rare, brief, and one time, we have these categories here. And then that's kind of like how we say, well, we create a solution, that's something we would put in there maybe. So those are how they're broken out under each of those 3 categories.
So we did discuss this at Providers Council. I think the most important point to the consolidated plan is that if there is future funding opportunities released, in particular at the state level, the Department of Children and Families and others, if it is not in our consolidated plan, it cannot be considered. So the consolidated plan is really important. And so sometimes it feels perhaps like we've included everything but the kitchen sink, because if there were a funding opportunity that were released, if it's not in our consolidated plan, we wouldn't be able to apply for that funding. I do also want to point out that on page 1 of this document, what you can see is the COC plan. It talks about the rare, brief, and one time, and then it goes into goals. So this is the conversation that I think Sean was talking about a second ago about priority populations. I will tell you that the priority populations, if they're listed here, it makes me a little nervous because they're not in the order in which we discuss them.
But we can fix that. That's
So
what I'm
I
talking about.
would like it to be fixed.
Absolutely.
So
That's
one,
an easy fix.
okay, so number 1 should be the number 4. Number 2 should be the number 3. Number 5 Here, let me just give it to you.
Yeah, yeah, we'll absolutely make it. That's an easy, update, April.
But in any case, that list is what Sean was referencing earlier, and what I was then saying that, you know, we should, you know, like an escape room, lock ourselves in and get to but we have put them in priority order, so to speak, but it does include basically everybody. I move approval on the consolidated plan
With the changes on the goals.
with the changes on the
Yes.
I second.
Any discussion or question? All right, motion in a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Right. Okay. Yep. All right, marketing communications. So Victoria, you and me,
Yeah.
and maybe Lieutenant Hayes can chime in.
So at the last COC membership meeting, which was March 8th, one of the topics of discussion was actually a big topic of discussion in a lot of the breakout groups was educating people. We all know what the faces of homelessness look like, but the public generally doesn't. There's a lot of stigma surrounding homelessness. So how do we as a COC address that? Number one is to make sure that people know who's experiencing homelessness in our community. It is not the image that most people have in their mind. It is the mother with children who is working and sleeping in their car. So Lieutenant Hayes, Councilmember Beckman, Monica and I all worked together. We made a couple of different flyers, graphics and whatnot, but this is the primary one that we made. And it is all about who experiences homelessness in Pinellas County. And whoa, that was way too far. Sorry about that, everybody. And also I'm realizing now I'm not sharing on Zoom. Nobody on Zoom can see what I'm doing here. There we go. So this here is the one pager that we made. And you can see here, we're talking about who do we help? It's Christine, a working mom who cannot afford rent because, it doubled. Taylor, who bravely chose the safety of a shelter after years of abuse. Grace, who gained custody of her grandkids after her daughter's death. Who do we help? How do we help them? And how can you help? That's another one of the big questions. How do you get involved? Where do you go if you need help? And where do you go if you want to give help? So this one pager here really points people to join the COC so that you can actually have a say in what happens and how you help people. Contacting the HLA if you need assistance, or viewing the homeless resource guide, which, by the way, I did bring a few copies of that are up there. Yep, that's the little yellow book in case anybody doesn't know. We also have a social media toolkit, which I will make sure is shared with everybody after this meeting, that will help you and your organizations share this, because we want to get this out. We want to make sure that this is shared widely. We want as many people as possible to see this. And we would like to make future iterations of this. So if anybody in this room would like to be involved in creating marketing material.
We have Michael Gelazzo and Danielle Thomas have agreed to help with that, and they're going to be working with us with the USF, with the Zimmerman group too, Victoria.
Awesome. So anybody else who would like to get involved, please let us know. But the social media toolkit you'll get will have some sample captions and whatnot, to make sure that we are consistently sharing information and messaging. And yeah, this is what this looks like. Hopefully it will help, show people who the faces of homelessness are. And anything that your organizations already have that are doing that as well, please share with us, because, HLA isn't the end all be all. We are not the only place. And, if DFL has something, please share it with us and we will share it with other providers.
Mm-hmm.
That's team effort, and we gotta make sure we're doing everything we can to educate everybody and reduce stigma.
So I love this. I think this is wonderful. I would suggest that we maybe create one of those boxes down there at the bottom that allows people to donate. I do think that we should be asking people for money.
Always.
And I don't think we ask enough people for money on this topic, quite frankly, and I think that we've got to get really bold about asking people for money. Sometimes it's the only way they can contribute or
Yes,
help.
very
They don't
much.
have time, they don't know how, they don't whatever. So I think we have to have a box down here that says donate here,
Yeah.
give now,
Yeah,
you know, whatever, as a part of the call to action, so to speak. I also think that, you know, this idea of Christina, working mom, I think that information is really helpful.
Yep.
There's a part of me though that also wants to like tell people where some of these people work. So for example, last Tuesday, I get an urgent phone call from the Pinellas County School System that one of their teachers
Mhm.
is living in her car with her 3 children. So it's not a mom who is working, and somehow our minds jerk to, well, she's probably working at Subway or something. It's like, nope.
Yeah.
We have people within our community, and where they're working is not a values judgment. I'm not attempting to make a values judgment about where somebody works. And so I think I want to be sensitive in my language, even around, I don't want to make a values judgment. I do, however, want to also communicate that it is us, it is all of us. And that we have staff and we have, you know, people that it is just us. It is somehow, I want to be able to communicate that, you know, we have people who are working within our industry, who are working within every one of our industries, actually, including no doubt law enforcement and
City workers,
city
municipal
workers,
all that stuff.
municipalities,
Yeah.
right, who can't afford these increases. And so I don't know how we capture that. And I'm not suggesting a change
Yeah.
here necessarily, other than
The
donate here.
Yeah.
Consider it done. It's done.
Yeah.
It's done.
Give now, donate here.
You don't have to tell us twice.
But one of the things that, you know, when we've been, I'm guessing at least a year discussing this, right? When we were at the meeting at the church with Councilmember Fig Sanders. And part of it, I want to make sure that we keep focused on the idea that we, whether it's this or something, you know, that we are gonna have enough of us who are willing to appear before the county commission, before city council, before the committees of the whole, where the proper place that, because we need to really push, because it's not enough just, you know, Kathleen, you're gonna advocate as much as you can. Both of you are, right? You know,
All 3.
all,
Mhm.
right,
Four.
4,
That's right.
Yeah,
but it can't just be them, right?
Right.
I mean, we've
it's a
got.
drumbeat. It has got to be a drumbeat.
And, you know, and I look at some of the times that I started trying to realize, you know, it was Harlan Peterson who got me roped in years ago, and, you know, but we've had those moments of times where we make big pushes. And we need to have a continual big push. And we're not gonna do that if we don't do something more with this. And listen, I don't have time, none of us have time. You talk about rank and review, I did it 1 year, I thought it was fascinating, because we don't
It is.
go after that funding. I don't have time for it, but this is something that actually has to happen.
Yeah.
And, you know, and I agree with fundraising and everything else, but if we don't use this to start advocating in a holistic way, not just for clients, but also for how hard it is on staff who can't afford to live in our county. I mean, all the things that I think that we've talked about, I don't know how many times, but this all has to happen. And, you know, so people who can be, and I don't think it's you know, Gelato has to go speak in front of everyone. Nobody wants that, because it'll just last too long and, you know, he'll drone on. But, you know, I'd like to have Sean there. I'd like to have Zach there. I think that, you know, mean, I'd like, April, it can't just be one or two people. We need a group of people who are willing to say, hey, listen, I can be at the city council in St. Petersburg. When's that next meeting? I've got time. So having a sort of shared calendar so that it's different voices being heard every time. To the point where it's like, all right, enough.
I have a comment too on the flyer. Thank you so much for it. I think there's some faces that are missing. And I know you can't really include every scenario, but there are some children that are aging out of foster care that find themselves on the street.
Yeah.
There are some folks that still in an opiate addiction and they are on the street. And there are some returning citizens who have no place to go and they're out on the street. And it may not look pretty, but that's the reality. And it may not get the donations that you want, because those are the populations, but those are certainly folks out there in need of this kind of support. So give some thought as to how you want to include those groups.
We ran out of room.
I-
So there was a lot.
Why we can't get to
Yes.
In order to put it all on one page, we had to make some cuts. But I think if we change this all the time and we can represent these spaces.
And or have 5 or 6 iterations of it, right? We can have
Yes.
5 or 6 iterations of the same
Yes.
message or the same
Yes.
tool, right? That has different pictures, different groups, different scenarios represented.
Sounds like this one is really targeted at homelessness as anyone.
Yeah.
Those
All of us.
populations are a friend, a family, a neighbor, or classmate to someone.
Yeah.
Well, so when we worked on it, Lieutenant Page and I and Victoria and Monica didn't send it out for a lot of feedback because we wanted to get it done. And I said at that March 8th meeting, I'll have it to you within a month, and we did. And we'll review it like each year. And so people that have comments, we can join in next year. I would say it's probably no problem to stick a donation.
Absolutely not.
QR code at the bottom. And I don't know how difficult it would be to have 2 or 3 versions where you're just going to change out, Victoria, the picture and the little blip about returning citizens,
Yeah.
kids aging out,
Yeah.
opioid drug, all that stuff.
Yeah.
I think that's fine, and then people can pull it out. I would say, again, Mike Gelazzo, as we need to beat the drum and show up at all these places. I'm certainly willing and will have people come, like Monica, others, Lieutenant Page, come and speak to our council during a work session to give an update. But I also have Clearwater Neighborhoods Coalition, where they're looking for speakers. There are women's groups that are looking for speakers, and those people are willing to donate a little bit here and there. But I would think we put these in laundromats, bus stations, churches, all that stuff. They just need to be everywhere in color. And kind of go from there. If anybody else has ideas of where to post them. Coffee shops,
$5.
Yeah. and libraries, our public buildings. Yeah, code enforcement offices, all that stuff with people, DMV, how about the DMV, right?
I have a question. So on the donations button, so that money that would come in based on that, would that be like regulated or?
We could use it to support, multiple things. We could use it to provide additional funding for gaps and services. We
Some
could,
people donate, they're like, okay, it has.
Housing, where they want to know where. Yeah.
yeah, we can actually, within the donate now button, we can actually provide multiple options where people can designate whether, so for instance, when we did cold night shelters. Yeah, no, that's a great, yeah,
That's good.
Unrestricted, right? I just donate now, it's unrestricted now. And PS, it would be a great problem to have, right?
Yeah.
For all of a sudden, we got all this money and we don't know where to put it. Great problem to have, and I promise you we'll be able to figure it out. And I think it should be unrestricted to Donna's point, right? It's just donate now. And if we can get the message out to people that $1 a month,
Yes.
right? I mean, it doesn't have to be these
Hillsborough is
steady amounts.
the Hillsborough CoC. And again, their structure is obviously a little different than ours. They're doing the campaign now in Hillsborough, asking Hillsborough County residents to give 1%. Give 1% of your income to help homelessness. And they're having some pretty good results. And so, there are absolutely, one of the changes that we've made at the HLA is, as you all know, that Brianna had left, and we don't really need obviously we need administrative support, but these are issues that we definitely need help on. So, we've promoted Victoria to our manager of organizational advancement to help really with all these things of how can we as a continuum look at what others are doing and within similar structures, different structures, to bring more unrestricted money into our continuum. And so we'll be definitely working on.
I mean, I
on
just
some guides.
think about things like getting this in the hands of our faith community.
Yeah.
Who, maybe they would agree at, their Saturday service or their Sunday service, 10 o'clock, that they would pass the hat, right, for homelessness issues, or, I just feel like there's there are groups and opportunities, when you think about the Exchange Club and the some of these civic groups,
Rotaries, all that
Rotaries,
stuff.
like all of them across the county have lunches. I was thinking earlier, when we were talking about success stories, it's like, if maybe we bring success stories here, but in order to tell your success story, you got to put $1. That's how you have to do it at the exchange. If you're going to tell a success story at the Exchange Club, you got to pay $1. And so, but coming up with tapping into ways that right now are already kind of happening. And I wonder, again, it just goes back to asking. And I know some people aren't comfortable asking for
Big
money,
fan, no problem.
but
I'm doing it.
I'm a big fan of asking for money, and I think we should be asking everybody. And setting expectations around really that it could be $1.
Yeah,
Because every dollar counts, but.
great. Yeah.
I will say, the link to share success stories, I'll maybe modify what it says. And if you have stories like, for instance, the teacher who is sleeping in her car with her 3 kids, maybe that isn't a success story yet, but it's a really moving story that can help bring a lot of success. So share those with us too, because I can, periodically update this flyer and make additional things. We are constantly sharing things on the HLA social media for the COC. And, I can turn that story into a social media post. I can turn that story into a newsletter feature. I can share that story widely. So please share those, because the only way that we get the stories to share is by sharing them together.
Yeah, I just somehow want the message to be that it is all of us, as opposed, again, I'm trying to be sensitive around it. I don't want value judgment type things included in the message. I want the message to be that it could be any one of us, and in fact, it is all of us. And so the variety that we have up here is good, great. I think it's lovely. I just want to make sure that what we're communicating to the community at large is that it could be any one of us, and that it is in fact all of us. And it is going to take all of us, a very much more compassionate society, for us to get where we need to be.
Are these actual stories?
They are modified stories. Absolutely. They
That
are.
might be helpful too.
That they're actual stories.
Well, to put actual,
Get permission from people.
Well,
and
we
put their-
can change names and
Oh, okay.
obviously pictures, but
I give you one.
this is, that might, the teacher, whatever, like real stories in Pinellas.
So you can, yeah,
It's a little bit more impactful because that can be like, well, that's,
looks too generic.
What if there was like?
it just brings it home a little bit more.
Yeah,
A real story with a link where they could go to the actual.
The full
story of each
narrative.
Person,
yeah,
like that's just.
You don't have a shortage of stories.
No,
right.
no.
The whole.
I think too, it's important, I mean, I feel it's important for people to understand ALICE, that acronym.
Yeah.
I think that's really powerful, that they are asset limited, income constrained, and employed. They are, they're employed and they can't, save enough money to, I
But I
think,
also think that's part of the narrative. And I think if we try to do too much,
yeah, I know, exactly, and that's what we kind of hate, we were. keep it clean.
Yeah, we ran out of room.
Yeah, and maybe we do have a flyer that's just about Alice, you know, this is what Alice needs, these are, and how many people fall under that in our county, because it's thousands, thousands, yeah.
So I must say, I think, you guys did a great job with this. It's a wonderful start. When I was at the annual membership meeting, I brought this up in our group. It was based upon something that PSTA does when they go out and do our legislative advocacy work with our elected officials. And so what we do is we do two-sided. So it's more of a card stock, and there's, you know, kind of facts and figures on the front and maybe a couple stories, and on the back is the advocacy steps and the actions. And so you kind of have it front and back that way. And so as the advocacy committee forms, and maybe something they want to look at is, you may have one of these double-sided that's kind of education-based and kind of raising awareness, another one that is more advocacy-based, both kind of community and system level. So just a thought.
Good idea. All right, what a nice segue.
I try.
Fantastic. So advocacy committee recruitment. All right. So I think part of our message here today has been, we need to keep talking about this. We need to keep it front and center. It needs to be a consistent drumbeat. I mean, that's kind of how I operate. I think Mike echoed that as well. And it seems in the, you know, and again, I'm new, ish. It seems that there's a delicate balance to walk about screaming from the rooftops and then having your hand out for money and not offending the people who you're screaming to, who have the purse. And you know, where do we fall? And we have providers, we have funders, we have elected officials. And we all have multiple hats that we wear. But as the COC, we are the most intimately aware of all these stats that we want linked on our success sheet, right? So that when we have 98% of this and that permanent supportive housing, that all looks good. But the other side of it is what's the way, you know, how many out there are not being served? And so we are the only voice for those not being served. And so I think we need to advocate more and have a plan. And whether it's, you know, local organizations like we talked about, neighborhoods, municipal, our cities, nonprofits, all that stuff, churches, or is it state legislators? I think we need to get a plan and beat that drum year round and have definitive asks, which is what you were saying, Ron, right? What are the asks?
I wonder though about getting this out to kind of the membership, because I think, you know, I just think it has to be more than the people sitting in this room who are staffing and or, you know, quote unquote, volunteering to be on all these committees. You know, I wonder if we couldn't solicit volunteers from the membership to be on advocacy. I don't know if it's accurate or not, but I think I heard recently that, you know, we're having a hard time achieving quorum in some of these committees.
Yeah.
And I don't know, you know, if maybe, you know, so sometimes expanding the committee makes it more difficult to achieve quorum. But sometimes expanding the committee can help as well, because you're asking people who are not already so tapped out to be there. But I agree, you know, that advocacy and getting the front and back page and the ask and all those kinds of beating that
Kind of a coordinated plan
Yeah.
across the county.
Yeah.
And, you know, I'd be willing to lead up that, you know, committee or
Would you like us to put an email out to the full membership then, doing your recruitment as well? Because we can put that out.
I jumped right on it. Yeah, no, I think so.
I mean, I think giving people a way to be a part of things.
Yeah.
Right, they show up at the quarterly membership meeting and they do the roundtables and the discussions. But maybe giving them other ways to stay involved, you know, to see the fruits of their labor, so to speak, and
in particular, our lived experience would be powerful component of this. And and an easy thing, I think, for them, because they can advocate wherever they happen to be most comfortable in the county, wherever they are.
On that note, we're confirming the exact dates, so I believe it'll be June 13th. We will be hosting the first lived experience advisory committee / youth advisory board meeting. We haven't had one of those in a while, so that is coming up. That is next month. I will make sure that everybody has the information once it's confirmed. But if you know of anybody that should serve on those committees, please, please, please let me know, let Carly know. If you let Monica know, she'll send us the information as well. Lived experience is anybody who is experiencing or has experienced homelessness in Pinellas County over the last 7 years. And yeah, the youth advisory board is the same thing, just for people 24 and younger. So we're gonna do the first meeting as a joint meeting, and we do provide stipends of some description. So we will provide food, we will provide bus passes, you know, and some things like that. On the horizon is, you know, eventually maybe childcare during these meetings, stuff like that, so.
And this is a place that people can donate specifically. So I've historically donated to this particular group so that they can make their way, get there to the meetings and or have childcare arrangements for their children so that they can participate. But again, it's another place that if somebody wanted to have some place specific that their donation is going to, so that we can get people money for Uber or for, you know, whatever it is that they need to be able to make their way to the meeting. Victoria, my understanding that you're gonna, so the first meeting on June 13th, you're combining the two?
We are, and they
Okay.
will not continue to be combined.
No.
We just thought it would be a good kickoff.
Yeah.
To combine it for this first meeting. It'll be a couple of hours.
And where is that meeting going to happen?
It will be at the Largo Public Library.
Nice and central.
I just want to make a comment. I just scan the contact HLA. And when you do that, the donate button is on there.
Oh, is it?
So, yeah, so when you scan that and
So maybe even at a,
contact,
you can donate.
there's a
your-
donate today
reverse it.
button right on there.
I think so.
Donate
Just
now, yeah.
just reverse it. So what they're clicking on is donate now and then take them to the HLA.
I do think that we have the contact HLA for people who needed assistance. That was that, yeah, we can work that out. for
Can't have too
sure.
many smoking mirrors.
One thing would be helpful, like I know for like my city, if we kind of taking what I talked about going in as a group, but putting it on the city council agendas as a presentation, you know, a quick presentation,
Yeah,
but then you could put that flyer or whatever or every iteration of it in the agenda, because then you have all of the community members who don't
Right.
go to the meetings, but they read through the entire agenda and tune into the meetings online. Separately from, you know, showing up for non-agenda items, that you
Yes.
have all of that there. And, you know, even if it were something like, you know, I could go to St. Pete's meeting or, you know, another meeting from it, just to bring and do a 5-minute presentation. And then also you could even ask if there are cities who aren't donating. I know that we specifically do to like Safe Harbor, things like that. But say, hey, would you consider us in your
Yeah.
budgeting
yeah.
for even, you know, a small donation to,
The Bel Airs, yeah.
so I think that would, yeah.
Big time.
I think there's two different, to that point, I think there's two different strategies that we need. One is grassroots, which would more be probably the membership and that kind of stuff, it's just going around to the Rotaries and the community neighborhood meetings. But then there is formal, which would really be a member of this board, a trained member of this board, or really the HLA, to go and make sure, and that's probably a larger conversation with the HLA board, just because we have a MOU to say like, look, you need to go a minimum to the entire community
Yes.
every year and get a presentation.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then maybe we can cover the smaller communities. And we also need a advocacy committee to vet stances
Yes.
of this board.
Mhm.
Which is not the grassroots kind of get out in the community, get the message out, here's the flyer, here's how you donate,
Right.
here's the resource guide kind of thing, but it's more like
Legislation and.
legislation. Horrible, how there was, there's been some things in St. Pete, tenants bill of rights, blah, blah, blah,
Yeah.
blah, blah. That are tougher conversations.
Mhm.
But I think as a body, and the leading body of homelessness in the community. We can take a stance or not. So I just want to make sure if we're getting something together that it's both of those things.
Okay.
One's grassroots
Yeah.
and is, training and getting out
Education.
education and the other one is more of policy focused and making sure we're asking for the funding from the municipalities, we're on the agendas, we're doing that, and we're either taking a position or not on certain items. Or at least have a process to do it.
Good.
And we have identified a staff member that I'm gonna be working with who will kind of be the liaison for advocacy. And what we're looking through is we've put together kind of a basic guiding document that is just like, kind of what you said, Sean, is we will look at issues. We review agendas now on a weekly basis internally to see if there's anything that we need to bring forth. But again, obviously, when I used to do this way back when, we would obviously have like an advocacy matrix of issues we knew coming up and a timeline. So we would institute something along those lines as well with that.
And I think the board members, especially, Kathleen and Donna, if it's coming before the city council and we don't know about it, that you guys bring it to us, right? Because we had that conversation recently too, is which direction this is going, and I think it's bi-directional. I think if anybody, who's an elected has knowledge of something that's getting ready to come before you or before a work group that we need to be weighing in on to bring that and invite in and your team doing that verse, looking at agendas, but I think it has to be both ways.
I'm lucky in the aspect that I have Arrow.
You do.
I know Arrow is amazing. Some founders.
She's on funders, yeah, she's on the funders council.
So and she keeps me very impressed. I'm a commissioner.
Yeah.
Real quick too. So you guys might want to look at this. When you hit the donate button on all three of these, it comes up as an error.
As an error,
Page error. 404 error, page not found. So it doesn't let you
we'll get that cleaned up.
donate.
All right, fantastic. We are like 2 or 3 minutes off, but looking good. Anybody have anything else? Announcements or public comment? Everybody good? All right, well, fantastic. You're good. All right, then the meeting is adjourned. I hope y'all have a wonderful weekend. Take one of Frida's cookies if you'd like, or have a cookie in the back. And we'll see you at the next meeting. Thank you for coming and having quorum. I appreciate that.
Ross, I know that you need me. I have like 3 minutes. Talk to me. Tell me.
Alternate suggestions.
Okay.
So instead, you could bring in many new cases. It's the word in the room that your staff has access to now.